It's the Fitness Lab Pittsburgh podcast, a new episode every week. A podcast about movement, part of making your life complete. Fitness Lab Pittsburgh, aka FitLab PGH, brings you interviews with people in the Pittsburgh area who understand movement is part of what makes life complete. Looking for a new movement idea or just want to hear interesting stories about people who make movement a priority? This is the podcast for you. Whether you consider the gym, dojo, or fitness studio your third place, or just want to learn more about movement, activity, and fitness to enhance your life, give FitLab PGH a listen. We interview locals in the Pittsburgh area who make Pittsburgh a great place to move. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Subscribing is free and gives you notifications when we release new episodes. Each podcast episode will be long enough to pique your interest and short enough to hold your attention. Have an idea for an episode? Know somebody we should interview? Or just want to connect with us? Drop us an email, fitlabpgh@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram at fitlabpgh. Already a fan of FitLab PGH? Check out our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast for movement professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers weekly interviews with movement professionals featuring topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you enjoy our next interview, starting now. FitLab PGH and our sister podcast, Moving to Live, firmly believe that movement should be treated as a lifestyle, not just an activity. That's why FitLab PGH, in addition to our weekly podcasts, releases 3 weekly videos, 1-minute movement tips and lifestyle hacks, and every Thursday on our website, we do a written FitLab PGH features. If you want to be featured in our features, go to our website, click on the link FitLab PGH Features Info, fill out a form, and get started. If you like what we're doing here at FitLab PGH, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever your podcast app that you listen to us on, or drop us an email with your comments. We always like to hear from listeners. You may not believe it, it's almost springtime and it's time to think about cycling if you're not a cold weather cyclist. So we sat down with a new bike shop, Samson and Hayley from Waxwing Cycles, and talked about cycling and about how they made the decision to start a bike shop in Pittsburgh. FitLab PGH back with another podcast episode. The good news is I did not have to go through a tunnel today. The bad news is I did have to go over a bridge, but I have not told today's guests that the pressure is on them. I know one of today's guests probably heard this in another podcast. We are at Biddle's Escape, and as listeners have heard, every time I do an interview in a coffee shop, it's a good interview. So Samson, Hayley, no pressure. We're in a coffee shop. You're drinking coffee. Today we are with Hayley and Samson of Waxwing Cycles, and they also have 2 shop dogs, Bagel and Pelly. We found them as one of our examples of stalking them on the internet with their pictures on, I believe, Instagram, and of course any pictures that have bicycles and dogs I'm a sucker for and I subscribe to. So Hayley, Samson, thank you for talking to FitLab PGH.
No, thanks for having us.
First question before we get into finding out your stories. Where is Waxwing Cycles? Because we know Pittsburgh is a city of neighborhoods, and some people may be going, I've never heard of that. I've no idea, but I'd like to check it out.
Well, part of why you probably haven't heard of it is we are new. So I'd say we're around 9 months. We've been in business. We're located in Edgewood. So for us, I'd say the best part about working from our own shop and being in our home is that we're really flexible. So if someone needs to come by, we are located, 1 mile from Frick Park. It's super central.
So only a couple of months in business, or a little more than a couple of months. My question I always start out asking FitLab PGH guests, we'll start with you, Hayley. Pittsburgh native, if not a Pittsburgh native, where are you from? Why did you come to Pittsburgh, and why are you still here?
I am not a Pittsburgh native. I grew up in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Philly, kind of in the Valley Forge area. And I ended up in Pittsburgh because I came here to go to Pitt. I studied anthropology and biology, and while I was there, I joined Pitt Cycling, kind of on a whim because I wanted to try racing, and I met Samson, decided I loved bikes, and that rest is history, basically.
Still racing bicycles or just riding for enjoyment?
I still race when I can. I love racing. Yeah.
And Samson, what about you? Pittsburgh native? If so, why are you still here? If not, what brought you here?
So for me, my family moved here from Phoenix, Arizona when I was around 8. And I loved racing. As a child, I think I was a very active boy. So my dad would take me to the local college track, and he would tell me, "We're going here. You need to run in circles until you're tired, so that I can have some peace when we get home, and you can get to sleep tonight." So starting, I'd say 4 or 5 years old, I was running 1 mile events, running every day. And my family moved here when I was around 8, and I would say I basically ran all the way through until high school. And I started doing different things. I started weightlifting. I competed a little bit in weightlifting competitions, but that and basketball, those were my 2 main events. And I really loved that. I found that the balance of a little bit of this and a little bit of that helped keep me moving and keep me going. And then, I went to Pitt for college, and I started racing bikes, and that's really when the bug hit me, like being able to compete and kind of move so quickly. I had a few injuries, I would say, from running. I had patella tendonitis in both knees, and that really put a damper on the pounding of the pavement. So cycling ended up saving my mental well-being, I would say.
So you have a lot in common with one of our previous guests, Rick Holsworth, who was a runner and said that injuries are what drove him to the bike also.
Oh my God, we see so many of that in the bike world because more people are getting into bikes than there are people who've basically been biking their entire lives. So as we see people, hey, I'm looking for my first real road bike or my first real trail bike. There's so many trails here and bike lanes. How do I do it? And when we explore more of that story, we end up finding out that a tremendous number of them used to be runners and had been hampered by injuries. Want something that they can burn lots of calories on and kind of see the city. This is a very bikeable city, so you don't have to race. You don't have to, adventure bike. Biking can be whatever you want it to be.
I'm kind of curious, as a former runner, do you ever strap on the shoes and go out for a mile or so, or just to see what it feels like and remind yourself that biking is a little less stressful on the joints?
The last time I went running with Hayley, which is a great part of having your partner be someone who's also athletic and actually a lot stronger than I am in so many ways. But we went running on Thanksgiving Day. So the one thing about being fit for bikes and then getting into a sport that you used to do is you totally forget just how weak you are. So I go out and I start running, and I have no idea how I'm supposed to be pacing myself. Hayley turns to me and says, "You're going really, really fast." I was like, "Whoa, it doesn't feel like it." And I want to say within a half a mile, I was walking. Just no concept of what I'm supposed to be doing in order to pace and where too far is too far.
I'm reminded of a friend of mine who went from a bike racer to a duathlete, where you run and bike, and he did the first Power Man that was in Alabama back when it was a 10K run, 60K bike, 10K run. And he was a very, very strong bicyclist. And I remember catching up to him on the second run, and he had gone as hard as he could on the bike, and it took him 2.5 hours to run the second 10K. I was much slower than him when I passed him. I still remember the phrase. It was like, "Dude, I've been out here for an hour and a half. I'm dying." And he was at 3 miles. So I think Samson has hit on it, the fact that there is some specificity, and if you don't run and then you go and try to do it, it's incredibly humbling, and it's a great reminder that right now people are starting to train for the Pittsburgh Marathon. If you happen to get in, don't decide the first week in April, "Hey, I need to start training because 4 or 5 weeks from now it's the Pittsburgh Marathon."
You will. I've definitely been places where I've my God, this is a good story where I have never actually ridden a century. Well, I had up until this past summer. Never ridden 100 miles, which is kind of a big thing for people who ride bikes.
It's comparable to a marathon for runners.
Yeah. So there was a big adventure race, I guess, out in...
It's in Lewisburg.
Yeah, in Lewisburg. It's called Unpaved PA. So it starts out in Lewisburg, and you basically go through Bald Eagle State Forest. It's 120 miles. And then there were also shorter segments, 75, and, as, go down from there. But Hayley decided that we were going to be doing the 120-mile section of the event. And I turned to her and I said, oh, my, why would you do that? Like, have you even ridden 100 miles? I haven't. I don't know what my body is going to do. And, I basically said, well, if I'm going to try to do this, I'm going to have to take it easy and actually, ramp up to it. I could see just trying to do 100 miles or so before and totally injuring myself.
Question is, now that you've done it, would you do it again?
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The ups and downs are fantastic. You battle yourself mentally and physically. You really go through everything. Just getting over, that 50. I'd say about the halfway point, 50 or 60 miles. You really start doubting yourself and questioning, why am I doing this to myself? Why can I do it? Will I finish? Where's the out? Is this not an out and back? Because I'd like there to be a short loop that I can maybe take a left on instead of going straight.
Yeah, well, this also wasn't on pavement either. This was gravel in the middle, I want to say between mile 85 and 100 was just the most brutal, like B road, big rocks. So hard on the body, and then when you finish that, you're like, holy crap, I've still got a lot left.
And I know I want to talk about that a little more in a few minutes when we talk about Waxwing, because I know from stalking you on Instagram, a lot of the bikes you build would be classified as cross bikes, gravel bikes, adventure bikes. We can talk about the different definitions. My favorite question I always ask, I suspect I know the answer is going to be for at least part of it. It's a two-part question. We'll start with you, Samson. Most interesting, fun, or challenging movement activity that you've done? Would that be that 120-mile gravel bike ride, or is there something else?
I would say that was it. That's basically the pinnacle of what I have done in terms of challenging myself both mentally and physically. I've done lots of other sports, and that event in particular happened to be one of the most challenging for me.
And what about you, Hayley? Same thing, or do you have some other activity that sticks in your mind at some point in your life?
No, I would actually say that the one season that I played rugby was the most extreme physical activity I've ever put myself through. I played wing. I was also probably the smallest girl at every single game. I was brutalized week after week, and it was incredibly fun, but I got so destroyed, and I think I played on 2 sprained ankles for a season. That really did it. That was it.
And was that kind of the choice? Just realized this is fun, but it's tearing me up. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm always curious. The second part of this question, 2-part question, we'll stay with you, Hayley, is there some sort of movement activity? Maybe it's a bike ride or something else. It's like, this is on my bucket list. At some point, I'm going to do it. I know some people don't like to do bucket lists. They like to say, this is just something I want to do. We've had everything from somebody said, I want to take a yoga class someday, to skydiving, to anything that's just like, this is something I want to do because it involves movement.
Yeah. There are a lot of things, I guess, that I want to do, but in particular, since I've gotten into gravel racing, I've realized that I really, really like that, almost maybe more than road racing. So I guess something on my bucket list would be to do some of the big gravel races, so Dirty Kanza, Rebecca's Private Idaho, which is a stage race. kind of get into that scene because it's competitive, but it's also a little bit more the people that do it are a little bit more laid back than road. And the scenery is awesome. Like,
nobody on a gravel bike is going to dive in on a corner and put you into the ditch.
Well, you sure hope not. Yeah.
Whereas you may see that in a road criterion because somebody who's racing Cat 4 or Cat 5, if it's a men, is going to think they're racing in the Tour de France.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For both of us, we came from that competitive scene. Hayley and I are both Category 2 racers, and for USAC, and we, everyone in that race is there to win or to help somebody else win, and it is like no holds barred. Criterions in particular are, it's like 60 minutes of the most like bar clenching activity you can do. But gravel seems to be whatever someone wants it to be, and whatever someone wants to race it, someone wants to just tour it, get off their bike, take a picture. That's, I think, what's really drawing us to the sport.
And I know as somebody, when he moved to Pittsburgh, I sold my road bikes. I have a mountain bike. I have a couple of gravel bikes / drop bar bikes. And to me, they are absolutely the best bikes you can have because you can ride on the road a little bit slower. You can buy an extra wheel set if you want to go a little faster on the road. And it's hard to get on them no matter what the ride is and not finish with a smile on your face.
Yeah.
So for people who are not familiar with this, and I know that there are a lot of bike shops, if you go in, they're going to say, well, you can get a road bike, you can get a hybrid bike, for lack of a better term. Talk about the different types of bikes, because you said a lot of your customers at Waxwing are new cyclists, or maybe they're coming because they're injured, or they see something that looks really cool, or they realize, hey, if I buy a bike, I can get a new pair of sunglasses and cool jerseys and things like that. Somebody comes in. Just briefly talk about the different types of bikes for somebody who doesn't want to race on the road, because I think you can probably find a lot of information on road bikes, but some of these others are a little more, not obsolete, but obscure.
Yeah, I think, gravel bikes, by definition, are bikes that you can ride wherever you really want. It's the bike that is perfect. It's not perfect for everything. But it's perfect in terms of its versatility. So we have people who basically will build a gravel bike, and they will do exactly what you said, which they'll have one wheel set with completely smooth, maybe larger size tires, great for potholes. They'll have another wheel set with a knobby tire, and then it's like changing your shoes. Your body is the same body if you're running a marathon on perfect pavement, or if you're going on a hike in the Laurel Highlands. You put the shoes on that are appropriate for it, and gravel bikes happen to be the perfect bike for someone who maybe is looking for one less bike, the N+1 that everyone talks about. I've got 5 bikes, I need one more, I need this specific bike. There is a lot of joy in the simplicity of a gravel bike. You really don't give up that much in terms of efficiency when you're on the road.
Since Samson brought up the N+1 equation, I have to ask each of you, Hayley, how many bicycles do you have?
Let me think for a second.
It's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
The answer is 6.
The answer is 6. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then are there also a couple of frames waiting to be built up?
No, they're all built.
They're all built. Samson, what about you? How many bikes?
I think 6 also. We bought a lot of our bikes the same, because we ride together, because we move together. If I had, let's say, a mountain bike, so I have a hardtail, she bought the exact same bike so that we could ride together, and so I think that's exactly how we ended up with the same number of bikes and the same types of each number of bike.
So Waxwing Cycles, how did you get started, or what was the idea to graduate from Pitt, be bike racers, and say, we should start a bike shop?
So it's I'd say a wild ride where we worked while I was in school still at Pitt, and while Hayley was actually also at Pitt. We worked at a bicycle shop that no longer exists, actually, Big Bang Bicycles. When we heard that Big Bang was going to be closing at some point, we knew that it wouldn't be long, and we did not want to, freshen our resumes and start, sending those guys out to people, and then going to all those interviews. We feel very strongly about the bike industry. We want to do what we want to do. We want to do it our way, and the best way to do that is to start our own shop. So there's no boss, although we are the bosses. We end up spending, a lot more time in our own shop than we did working. So we probably, especially during the summer, we'll spend 10, 12 hours during a work day getting things done. But in the end, we're kind of doing it for ourselves, and we're living the dream, I'd say.
I'm also curious with the decision to open a bike shop. People go to college, they maybe open a bike shop or work in a bike shop, and then mom and dad or friends say, or husband or wife says, hey, when are you going to get a real job? Have you gotten any of that? Or do your friends and do your families recognize that, sometimes the real job is not a 9-to-5er if it allows you the flexibility to do the things that you want to do, in your case, move and ride a bike?
Yeah, I think everybody has been really supportive of us. Our parents are really supportive. They don't bother us about the real job.
I mean, your dad has been riding road bikes.
Oh yeah, well he
forever.
loves bikes too, so he's like super excited that we have.
He likes the idea of a pro deal now.
Oh yeah.
We hook him up when it's time, and then my mom loves bikes, although she doesn't do road bikes. She uses it as a form of transportation. So she doesn't drive, but she lives in Greenfield, so she can bike any number of the trails and bike lanes around the city to get all of her errands done. Even when it's really cold, she's able to get out.
I probably have been remiss in not getting more clarification on. You spent a lot of time talking about the great things about a gravel bike, but there may be a lot of people who don't know what a gravel bike is. So how does a gravel bike differ from, say, what people have probably heard of, which would be a road bike and a mountain bike?
A gravel bike basically allows for a wider tire on a bicycle and basically by putting a wider tire on, you can go on more than just pavement. You can go on gravel, you can go on dirt, you can go through puddles and not, sink into mud. And so people call them gravel bikes, but a lot of times you might also want to call them an all-road bike because it can kind of do everything.
Somebody who maybe has a little bit of knowledge, is maybe from Europe, would say, well, that sounds like a cyclocross bike. Is that the same thing, or are there differences between the two?
Cyclocross bikes tend to be a little bit more nervous of a bike. I would say if you took a road bike and married it with a mountain bike, the best of both of those worlds, you would end up with a gravel bike. It's a bike that handles like a road bike. It's very sure. You can, it doesn't feel like a cyclocross bike tends to have a really twitchy front end. So that's a bike that is turned at slower speeds. It's a bike that's intended to be raced. A gravel bike is, it's far more neutral in terms of the way that it feels.
And is that the cyclocross bikes more twitchy because they're typically raced for maybe an hour and 15 minutes over a course that's very curvy?
Yeah, they will have also like a higher bottom bracket. So where those pedals are is basically higher up in the air to clear obstacles. With a gravel bike, you really you get that slightly lower bottom bracket, so lower center of gravity. It feels more balanced, I would say, than a cyclocross bike. And that's really why there's so much draw to gravel bikes. You're getting a bike that doesn't nail you into anything. We have people that put 2.1 mountain bike tires on their gravel bikes, and they ride them in the winter, in the snow. They'll take that bike out and really treat it as a mountain bike, and then turn around, put on 30 millimeter smooth tires, and ride it like that. And then there's anything in between. There's all the way from mountain bike knobs to completely smooth, and then really anywhere in between a standard road size tire all the way up to a serious mountain bike tire.
Somebody's listening to this, and I know we're doing this interview in mid-February, so people who are thinking about getting into biking who aren't hardcore, this is the time when they start looking around. And I think this is a great time as a young shop and as a bike shop for people to get good information. Obviously, they want to buy a helmet, but the big question that I know a lot of people who aren't cyclists always ask is they say, how much money do I need to spend? I'm just getting into this sport. I know there's Rails to Trails in Pittsburgh, and maybe I want to do some of the Bike Pittsburgh events where they close down the city and I can ride through it. But, I've got friends who are cyclists and they spent $4,000 on a bicycle, and I don't want to spend $4,000. Why shouldn't I go to Walmart and pick up a bike from there? What can I get from a local bike shop that's better?
Definitely don't ever buy a bike from Walmart. That is, buy a bike. You don't have to buy a bike from us.
And not to pick on Walmart, but Target, Kmart, if it still exists somewhere, any big box store.
Support your local bike shop. The bikes that we sell are primarily, in like the $3,000 and up range, and we do a lot of custom. So this isn't someone's first bike or first. Well, it can be, but it's not someone's first foray into the bike world. So what we do a lot more often than not is we pick a frame set. We make sure that it's fit for them, it's the right size, and then from there we basically build the bike from scratch. So we pick wheel sizes. We pick, do you want 2 gears up front? Do you want 1 gear up front? Do you want electronic or mechanical? It's like you get to build exactly the bike that you want, but a lot of that comes with having already ridden a bike or having some knowledge of what you'd like to get out of your biking experience. Because, like I said, when you go walk into a bike shop, someone's going to point you to a road bike or a triathlon bike or a gravel bike that someone has built and respect exactly the way that the manufacturer wants. Whereas when we're building a bike, if you know where you're going to be or what you want, it really helps with the process. So anything, I'd say $1,500 and up is going to get you a great gravel bike, and then you grow with it. When you're ready to evolve into something else, do it. But until then, just keep riding your bike.
And I know you also, I've seen pictures where people will bring you frames and you will essentially retrofit them with more modern components. So maybe somebody has a road bike that's a really nice bike or a mountain bike that's really nice. And let's face it, components have a limited lifespan. If it's taken care of, many frames can last longer than multiple components.
Yeah, and that's the thing about the gravel bikes. You can that wide frame, the way that it's manufactured, gives you that versatility that you could use or not use. And so, these are bikes that could be that last bike for somebody. And then there's always going to be specialization. There's always going to be a tri-bike or an aero road bike. But this is really going to kind of fill in everywhere in between.
I know as somebody who has lived other places, I can safely and without reservation say that the roads in the Pittsburgh area, are some of the worst I've ever ridden on. Just because they are very rutted. And the other thing that's really bad is, especially if you ride out in the country, it's not at all uncommon to have a road with no shoulder. So the advantage of something like a gravel bike or a mountain bike is if you do have to go off-road, it's not like riding a road bike where you get tacoed. Somebody's listening to this, and one of the things that I know is often asked by new cyclists is, well, do I have to use a bike with those weird handlebars that curve around, or can I get flat bars? What's the advantage and disadvantage of both of those? And can somebody, if they're listening to this, do some gravel bikes have flat bars?
Yes. Yeah. We have built gravel bikes with flat and the curly bars, as some people
curly
like
style.
to call them, but drop bars is what they go by. It really depends on what the person is looking to use that bike for. A lot of people, if they want to be more upright or relaxed, they'll end up with a flat bar bike just because it keeps them more upright in general.
We had a guy who actually we built one of our open frames into a flat bar gravel bike because this guy lived right by the Montour Trail. He was into BMX when he was a kid. He was into motocross. So for him, curly bars weren't an option. But and that's the thing. That's the thing about these bikes is, I told him, listen, I'll build this up with flat bars. If you change your mind, we don't have to do anything but put curly bars on, and this could be a road bike. We've changed the shifters, changed the bars, and you're off and ready to go. And I kept that in mind when I actually spec'd the bike, and that ends up making that bike like tremendously versatile. For him, it's a big investment to build a bike, to buy a bike. Doesn't matter how much you're spending or not. It can be a lot of money. So making sure that it's kind of future-proofed is definitely ideal and a nice feature.
And I'm curious with that gentleman, since you came from a BMX background, did he use clipless pedals? Did you put a pair of BMX flat pedals on?
I put a pair of, we call them like half and halves, but it's a flat pedal on one side. And he didn't even have to start with shoes. This was kind of like the perfect example of what a gravel bike can be to somebody, is we put flats on with a clip-in, like a binder, kind of like a miniature ski binding on the other side, so that he could ride it flats. And then when he progressed, or if he never progressed, but it would always be there for him, so we wouldn't have to basically take something away and have it collect dust somewhere.
We're talking with Hayley and Samson of Waxwing Cycles. People are listening to this. We'll have show notes with your website and your Instagram and Facebook pages. I'm curious, are there specific hours that you're open in the spring versus the summer, or is it more along the lines of email or message you through social media?
We do all of our work by appointment. We do have listed hours, but since we do work from home, but most of our business ends up coming word of mouth, or people will find us on the internet and they'll just get in contact with us either over the phone or email. Yeah,
think about your like local car mechanic. You don't pop in unless you have something catastrophic happen with your vehicle. But you generally give him a call and say, hey, I've got this going on. He kind of gives you some idea of what's going on, what he thinks it might be, and then you schedule a time to swing by. And yeah, that's like, we're very open in terms of time. We have hours that we are always in the shop, but for the most part, you send us a text, send us a call, send us an email, and we set up a time and you swing by and we see you in, and you chat directly with us. We show you, we take whatever time we need in order to help you understand what's going on and how we can make it better.
Curious, as a last kind of finished question for both of you, two-part question again. The first part is, what's your favorite thing about cycling in Pittsburgh? And the second part is going to be, what's your least favorite? We'll start with you, Hayley.
My least favorite part about cycling in Pittsburgh is battling the traffic to get out to a good route. It's, especially living within the Triangle, it is. It takes a lot of mental energy to be able to get out and ride.
Do you think that's part of the reason why you've switched primarily to gravel biking?
I think so. And so as a second part to that question, my favorite part about riding in Pittsburgh is its proximity to very good riding. Our favorite place to ride is Ligonier. So while it's not in Pittsburgh, it's a very short drive to get there, and the riding's amazing. You can ride road, you can ride gravel, and you can do it in a day and come back. And
Samson, what about you? Least and most favorite things about cycling in the Pittsburgh area?
Least favorite, I would say, is the same answer as Bailey. Just the traffic, kind of battling through that. Getting out of the city to do a bigger ride, I think, is the part that is the most taxing for me mentally. You're riding your bike and you got to get through the lights and there are buses and cars, and we're constantly living in a society where drivers are only more distracted than they've ever been, with phones and all the gizmos and doodads that causes that. So we really think that which actually leads me into my favorite part of cycling in Pittsburgh are the trail systems. So, Frick Park, Shenley Park, there are great places to go out, ride a gravel bike, ride a mountain bike. But the Gap Trail in particular is phenomenal. We'll take our gravel bikes, we'll go out to a section of the Gap Trail, we'll park, we'll ride 10 miles on perfectly graded, limestone, and then we make a turn off the trail in one of which place do we use?
Ohio Pile.
Yeah, so we get off in Ohio Pile, and then we'll ride, beautiful roads there, forested roads, and we, come turn around, drop that back down to the trail, and ride back to our car, and we can really go wherever we need to, thanks to that system.
Waxwing Cycles in Edgewood. Check them out. And remember, when you make an appointment to come see them, bring some dog treats for the 2 dogs.
Always appreciated. Yep.
Hayley, Samson, I want to thank you for taking time for meeting us, and good luck with the cycling in the gravel racing. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of FitLab PGH, brought to you by Moving to Live. Intro and exit music is Marathon Man by Jason Shaw. Check out the show notes for contact info for our latest guests, links to other information mentioned in the episode, and links to our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise for professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Your free subscription gets you notified when we release a new episode. Questions, comments, suggestions? Email us at fitlabpgh@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at fitlabpgh and like us on Facebook. If you enjoy our podcasts, please tell your friends about us and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Make FitLab PGH a go-to place to learn more about movement in the Pittsburgh area. Until next time, keep on moving.